I think Oregon recruiting is about to take off to the moon, and quite frankly, it needs to.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. The future of a one-wheel Stein and Austin Novosad coming up on today's show. And could Dan Lanning break a program record again? Yes, he absolutely could. That's all today, and it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Oregon recruiting at the moment is indeed at a historic low in the Dan Lanning era. I could come on here and sell you a bunch of fear-mongering. Oh my goodness, it's falling off. It's going in a horrendous, 41st in the country. Let me give you some schools that are currently ranked ahead of Oregon on the trail. Purdue, first-year coach Barry Odom. South Carolina, Texas Tech. Texas Tech spends a lot of money, though, and I don't begrudge them for that. Vanderbilt, Boston College, Pitt, Indiana, Syracuse, Stanford, Washington, Kansas, SMU, Arkansas, Rutgers. So, is it early? Yes, of course it is. Now, do I actually feel bad? No, not at all. Now, the first reason that I don't feel bad is on Friday, I expect Oregon to get a commitment. I will be in a post-Jackson Cantwell, Jared Curtis level of disappointment if Oregon does not land four-star receiver Messiah Hampton. So he has been kind of predicted by recruiting analysts out there to go to the Ducks for a long time. I've heard from a couple different people that Oregon is in a really good spot. He is committing on Friday, June 13th. Matt Prame over on 24/7 of the Odds and Audibles podcast said on their show that, he is Oregon's recruit to lose. And that's kind of the way it's felt for quite a long time. So that's what I've heard. That's what I have read. And that's just kind of the vibe that I get. By the way, Richard Wesley was on campus recently. Just throwing it out there. Once again, that I will throw my prediction out. For those who have not heard it before, Richard Wesley will wind up being a Duck. Just a prediction. Just Spencer's gut feeling. That's a 10 on Spencer's scale of agreement. So, Hampton commits on Friday. I think that will be the start of some big-time momentum for the Ducks. Now, the other big name that is in the fold right now is five-star quarterback Ryder Lyons, who is the top uncommitted quarterback in the class of 2026. Yes, he's really a 2027 kid, but I haven't heard or read anything lately about Matt Ponatoski, the four-star quarterback that Oregon offered after they missed out on five-star quarterback Jared Curtis, who went to Georgia, of course. But I think that Oregon right now is going to be in a position to land a couple of guys within the next, week or so. I think it will start with Hampton. I don't think that it will end there. I've heard good things on Jet Washington. Ryder Lyons has, long been kind of predicted to Oregon after they missed on Curtis. They, I think, shifted their focus there very heavily. But I did say a while back that if Oregon doesn't have, 2 or 3 commits by June 15th, then I'd start to turn the worry or the panic meter up quite a bit. And I'll again point out, that's not what I'm selling you here in the first segment of today's show. Even though this is, at this point in the cycle, this is the lowest ranked Oregon's recruiting class has ever been under Dan Lanning. That can change very quickly. You go out and get Messiah Hampton, I'd imagine you at least get back inside the top 35, maybe even back inside the top 30. You add Ryder Lyons, you are back inside the top 20 immediately. But then work has to be done for Oregon to get where I expect them to be year in and year out, which is landing a top 10 recruiting class. That's the baseline expectation of success, in my view, on the trail. And Oregon can still get there, but this is the most heavy lifting they will have had to have done from June onward since I've been covering them here on the show. And this is like year 4. This would be the fourth think, full recruiting cycle. Yeah, because I started the show around the same time Dan Lanning got hired. So, yeah, fourth full cycle. This is, the lowest spot they've been in, but their official visitor list has been really good. And, of course, every official visit is the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of humanity. I laugh every single time I see one of those articles now. So-and-so had a great visit. Who's ever had a bad visit? How do you have it? What would a bad visit look like? Maybe I need to get Tristan Phillips back on the show and ask him what a bad visit would look like, or if he's had one or anything like that. Because, schools have so much money and they put so much time and resources and effort into all this sort of stuff. And Oregon has another big weekend coming up. Lions is one of several high-profile recruits that are going to be on campus again this weekend. But, I just... There's so much that goes into recruiting. I don't know what a bad visit would look like. Some might be a little bit better than others. It might be a little bit cooler. Maybe you like the photo shoot more. Maybe the weather was better. The travel was easier. But from, a school-to-school standpoint, I don't know how you differentiate those sorts of things. But, Oregon's average recruit rank or, scoring system, I'm not pronouncing this incredibly well. Let me try again. Oregon's average recruiting rank, I can't speak. So I apologize that I've forgotten how to speak English. The point that I'm trying to make is the average rating of Oregon's 2026 commits are still really, really good. It's not as if they don't already have guys in the class that are really talented, can be high impact players. I think Kendra Harrison, the 5-star tight end, could be seeing the field in a meaningful way as a true freshman. I don't say that a lot, but he's certainly one of those guys. I'm very interested to see if he, winds up playing basketball at all for the Ducks. I think he could be an Elgin Cook type of player. But I think overall, Oregon in the next couple of weeks just feels like they're ready to pop off. They had a big visit weekend. The first weekend in June, they're doing that again this weekend. And, I wanted them by June 15th to have picked up a couple of commits. I fully expect Messiah Hampton to pick Oregon on Friday. If he does not, that will turn up my panic meter. Last time I think someone asked me about it with regards to recruiting, I was at about a 4. It would get cranked up to probably around a 6 for what the 2026 class can become if you're not getting a guy who you definitely should get. And the interesting thing with Hampton too is one of the schools that is pushing for him is Syracuse, and that relationship, of course, got established with Oregon's current receiver coach, Ross Douglas, dating back to his time with the Orange. So he should wind up picking Oregon. If he does, I'll definitely have a film breakdown at some point in time here on the show. Probably get Brian on here to do that because he's great with that sort of stuff. But that's the next name that I expect to commit to the Ducks. And hopefully that starts to snowball things forward, because if Oregon wants to pull off a top 10 class, which I expect them to, they got to kick it into gear eventually. You can't wait and have no commits in the entire month of June. Maybe I'm just trying to speak that into existence because I like having commitments to talk about here on the show. Maybe, but perhaps not. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Will Stein and Austin Novosad, could their futures be one and the same? First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their mind. My friend is an Indiana Pacers fan. He's losing his mind. A lot. It's the kind of atmosphere you want to experience live, and this year's matchups have already delivered, and they keep on delivering. I mean, the Pacers are something else. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I have used it on multiple occasions. I've had a great experience. I went to a sporting event, the Big Ten championship game, as a matter of fact, because the Big Ten didn't approve my credential. Don't know why, but that's okay. Got to the game, sat with one of you guys out there, had a great time. And Game Time made it really easy. And panoramic seat views, no surprise fees. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think about this topic more than you would probably think. So, got this from a Locked On Ducks insider. If you want to submit a take for Spencer's scale of agreement, you can do that. YouTube comments, Twitter, become an insider, get priority access. You want to submit a mailbag question, or you just want to say hello or tell me I'm a buffoon, you can do it in all of those ways. So, hot take. Will Stein will leave after this year and Novosad will follow him. I don't think it's that hot of a take. I really don't. So one job that I have discussed in the past as a potential for Will Stein to be the head coach of is Stanford. Watch to see what happens down there in Palo Alto. Stanford, by the way, has more recruiting power than you'd think. They currently have a top 25 class. They've pulled top 25 high school classes in the past. They're using the transfer portal now that Andrew Luck is there and saying, hey, we have to do this to be competitive. So that job is not, it doesn't appear to be as unappealing as it did a year ago at this time. The introduction of Andrew Luck is a significant one. So that's definitely a job. And for Stein, who's really made a name for himself as an offensive coordinator at Oregon out on the West Coast, plenty of ties up and down in the state of California and beyond. Yeah, that could make plenty of sense if you're the Cardinal and you wanted to hire, a young up-and-coming coach like Stein, who's not even 40 years old. I don't even know if he's 35, actually. He is, let's see, he's 35. He is 35. So, he's born in September. Greatest month of the year for a birthday anyway. That's when mine is, hence why I say that. But Stein and Novosad leaving together, on Spencer's scale of agreement, 7. I give that a solid 7 because, something that I always point out whenever Novosad comes up here on the show is that he was not recruited to Oregon to be a backup quarterback. The Ducks could not possibly have known. I don't care how much 3, 4, or 7-dimensional chess you think coaching staffs or Oregon staff can play. They could not possibly have known that Dante Moore would wind up transferring back to Oregon one day. Obviously, they were ready for that possibility when it presented itself, but they recruited Novosad because they thought, okay, Dante Moore's going to UCLA. We need someone who we believe can be a starting quarterback one day. And I think from what we've seen, it's been very limited in game action. Novosad looks like he has all the tools to be able to do that. I mean, in the spring games, man, he has got some elite high-level ball placement. I mean, he and Dante Moore just haven't been that different in the 2 spring games where, we've seen them both play, which is last year and this year. So I am really, really impressed and really, really high on Novosad. And who recruited him? Will Stein. That's the only guy that has ever been his quarterback's coach / offensive coordinator. Stein, of course, does both for the Ducks. And depending on how the season goes, can certainly affect how hot of a name Will Stein is as a potential head coaching candidate. Generally, guys that move up to be coordinators in their early 30s want to be head coaches one day. We saw that with Kenny Dillingham. You can look at Brennan Marion, who is now the head coach at Sacramento State after being at UNLV for the last couple of years. He could have stayed on there as the offensive coordinator with Dan Mullen and the new staff, but he didn't want to. He wanted to be a head coach. That's just a pretty typical trajectory in the coaching world. So the idea that Stein would take Novosad with him, not crazy whatsoever. Because in 2026, I hope Dante Moore is back. It would not be bad news if he isn't, though. If Dante Moore isn't back, the most likely scenario that leads to that is he was so unbelievably good. He outperforms my expectations. He's a Heisman finalist, and the NFL looks at him Mitch Trubisky style and says, yeah, you only started 1 full year in college, but we think you're good enough to just come out in the NFL right here, right now. That's what would lead to Novosad sticking around. I think he is too talented. Seems like a really good dude. good head on his shoulders, and I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. And so if you're Will Stein and you take a head coaching gig somewhere, well, what's the first thing you got to figure out? Who's my coaching staff going to be, and who's my team going to be? And wouldn't it be nice to bring a quarterback with you who you are incredibly familiar with and who you know, whatever school you're going to, is talented enough to go there and start and is hungry for an opportunity? He wouldn't have to learn a new system. He'd, of course, have to get acclimated to his new teammates and whatnot. But, yeah, I think the two of them going somewhere together, not some outlandishly crazy thought or hot take. Certainly not a guarantee, because maybe Stein goes and becomes a head coach at, I don't know, give me a random G5. Here's one. Think about this. Let's say Jeff Traylor, the head coach at UTSA, gets hired to be the head coach at Baylor if they fire Dave Aranda because he regresses this year. That's possible. Not likely, but possible. If that takes place, Will Stein is going to be near the top of their list because he was their co-offensive coordinator while he was there, and been the offensive coordinator at Oregon. Next step, likely to be a head coach. So, yeah, I think that all is within the realm of possibility, but maybe Stein sees that as the place that he wants to go, and he goes to Austin and says, I want you to come with me, and Austin says, I've got an offer from a Power 4 school over here. They're going to be able to offer me more money, and I'm, guaranteed to be the starter as well. So they wouldn't be a lock to go together. But, I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think it's a really, really interesting take. My theory is that in 2026, Austin Novosad will be the starting quarterback for the Baylor Bears. I'd rather he stays at Oregon because, gosh almighty, he seems like he could be the Brian Bennett of backup quarterbacks, who is forever and always my dream backup quarterback. But, I think that those two guys can simultaneously stay at Oregon as long as they want and be really important parts of the football program. And if they choose to, they can go have their own ventures not literally anywhere, but a lot of other places, because there might just be other guys. Like Will Stein's not going to be the head coach at Oregon. Austin Novosad, if Dante Moore comes back, probably won't be the starting quarterback at Oregon, unless, of course, he winds up surprising us all and starting this year. So that would be a surprise to many, myself included. But I do not think you are crazy whatsoever for thinking they could be a package deal. That'd be a pretty good package deal for a school to bring in. That would be pretty darn good. So more takes to get to today. More takes indeed. How many NFL draft picks will Oregon have? Could they set another record? No, they couldn't. Oh wait, yeah, they could. All right. A handful of Spencer's Scale of Agreement takes to get to before we wrap today's show. I don't know what Friday's show is going to be just yet. Could be a crossover with Zach Seiko of Locked On Nittany Lions. Could talk recruiting with Brian. Haven't really figured that out yet. I'll figure it out tomorrow. Bud sends in a couple. One being a Spencer Scale of Agreement take. Oregon will sign a decommitted blue chip recruit from USC in the 2026 class. Don't know who that would be. USC has flipped a couple of kids that were at one point committed to Oregon. Jonas Williams, the quarterback, notably among them. I'm going to put a 3 on that. USC has 28 commits in the class of 2026, and sure, they could lose a couple more kids, but I don't know that there's one that immediately sticks out as, oh man, Oregon could go. Like Mark Bowman, the tight end, is someone who Oregon was after. I didn't expect them to land him because I don't know how often you land two 5-star tight ends in a cycle. I think the name that stands out the most that Oregon was after, if he were to decommit, and I have no insight indicating he would, is Elbert Hill, 4-star cornerback. So, they flipped Tomahini to Pui or Tom from Oregon, Jonas Williams as well. So, I get where your head's at, wanting to get a jab back there at USC, but no, I'll put a 3 on that one. Not super confident that happens. Bud also sent in this one. The new Portland WNBA team, which is set to begin play in 2026, would sell out if they were able to get Sabrina on their team. Any chance of that? And they're expected to reveal their name in the coming months. Your thoughts on a name? Honestly, haven't thought about the name, but you are so right. I'm at a 9 on an agreement that if Sabrina were to be on the Portland WNBA team, I don't know why she'd leave the Liberty. They just won a title. But if she were to be on the Portland, boy, Oregon fans would flock to that. She came back to play an exhibition game at Matthew Knight not long ago, and a bunch of people showed up. Why? Because Sabrina's awesome. So, thoughts on a name? I don't know. I'm not good with that sort of stuff. That's the only type of question I won't answer. I'm not creative. Not in like the typical sense. In the sports sense, I'm much better at tying conference title contenders to Star Wars characters, as I did on yesterday's show, than I am trying to come up with a name for a sports team. Like, I need to hear the options and know, and then say, yeah, that's good, that's not good. Not good with coming up with options. That's a family trait, shall we say. Dylan sends this one in. Spencer scale of agreement. Oregon will have 4 first-round draft picks next year. Oh, goodness. In order from most likely to least. 1, Mateo. 2, Isaiah World. 3, Kenyon Sadiq. 4, Dylan Thieneman. 5, Evan Stewart. I think this question was sent in before the injury. 6, Dante Moore. 7, Mekhi Hughes. 8, Amari Washington. 9, Emmanuel Prenon. 10, Devin Jackson. Obviously, 5 to 10 are longer or long shots. Agree. But top 4 are very real. And if one misses, you got 5 to 10 that could get in. He means like the 5 to 10 ranked players there. So, 4 first-round picks. Mateo and Isaiah World, I agree. Sadiq, really posh. I tell you what, Thieneman playing to a first-round pick, that'd be a lot, because that'd mean 2 safety. He can't be the first safety coming off the board. I don't care what season he has this year. Caleb Downs will be the first safety that comes off the board in the 2026 NFL draft class. So he would have to be so good that a second safety goes, which, can happen. Feels like right now in the NFL, quarterback, receiver, edge rusher, wideout. I think I said receiver and wideout in there, which is the same thing twice. But those feel like higher priorities, generally speaking, than safety. But the first 3, I totally agree. Sadiq is a freak. I don't think he's a lock to be a first rounder. I think World is close to it as long as he does well this year. And Mateo is... I would be more surprised if Mateo falls out of the first round than I was at Shedeur Sanders falling out of the first round, going all the way down to the 5th to join our guy Dylan Gabriel in Cleveland. So on the scale of agreement that you have 4 first-round picks, I will give that a 4. Slightly less likely than not, just because you would have to have a big season from Sadiq. Totally possible. Totally and completely possible. Without Evan Stewart in there, I talked about him earlier this week. Maybe Oregon, for the first time ever, has a tight end eclipse 600 yards receiving, and maybe Sadiq pushes for a 1,000-yard campaign, and he's the new Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers was a top 10 pick. Yeah, that's on the table, to be sure. Is it a guarantee? No, it is not. Can it happen? 100%. Thieneman, I think, is the slightly bigger wild card. Certainly, he's got some NFL traits, but we don't know how he's going to look on the Oregon defense right away. He looked really good first year at Purdue, not as good the second season. But then again, we saw that staff was not really put in a position to succeed, nor were they as good as maybe it looked like when he was originally hired. Ryan Walters, that is. from Illinois. Fun fact, he's now the defensive coordinator up at Washington. So, yeah, I can see it. I can see it. More likely than not, though, I don't think Oregon gets to 4. I do think they get to 2. And not this year, but with the way Lanning is recruiting, Oregon just set a record with 10 NFL draft selections. That's more than the previous record, which was 8, also set by Dan Lanning staff. I believe one day he will get further into the double digits. I don't think that's that hot of a take. If someone sent that in for Spencer's scale of agreement, I'd probably put that at about 8.5, 9, because Lanning in year three churns out a record for the number of Ducks selected in the NFL draft. Certainly he's had time to recruit and develop guys like Josh Connerly and, brought in some high-profile transfers like Derek Harmon and Dylan Gabriel as well. Not Noah Whittington. Jordan James was, one of Dan Lanning's earliest recruits that was drafted in the 6th round by the 49ers. Terrence Ferguson has been great all 3 years, or was great all 3 years that he was on Dan Lanning coached Oregon team. So, I think the NFL pedigree from a development standpoint has been well established. As Lanning continues to recruit at a higher and higher level, I think the number of NFL draft picks just continues to stay steady at least 6 to 8 every year. But Oregon could be one of those programs that gets 10 or more year in and year out. This year, we'll see. We'll see. But one day, maybe not next year. We'll see how this fall goes. But one day, I think Lanning will break his own record and get 11 or 12 guys drafted. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.